from Vav Tishrei Tafshin Chav Ches, 1968. And the Kvius was the same thing like this year, where the first 3 days of the year was like this year. Thursday was the first day, Rosh Hashanah, Friday was the second, Shabbos was the third day. It's going to be important for what we can learn later on. And the Rebbe is going to talk about the famous issue about tshuva. How do we have, especially Aseres Yemei Tshuva, how do we have that combined with the issue of Simcha? Where does Simcha and Tshuva really fit together? Seemingly these are not the same thing. So obviously beforehand the Rebbe is going to contrast. The Rebbe is first going to talk about how Tshuva is at first glance something that is not about Simcha. And then the Rebbe is going to elaborate on the Simcha component. So the Rebbe starts off the Farbrengen with the Gelin, not Tshuva, Shabbat Mei Tshuva, concerning the idea of Tshuva in the 10 days of Tshuva, in the Bechlolis in general, the muscular at first glance. The whole idea of Tshuva and the 10 days of Tshuva is connected with an approach of sadness or and being upset and so on. By first prefacing, Yesh Tshuva Nailis Kefi Shehi B'Shleimusa, there is a higher level of Tshuva, the way it's in its most perfect state, Kimeduber La'el, like the Rebbe spoke about on the Farbrengen previous to that. Al Pi Divrei Rabbeinu Hazaken, according to the words of Alter Rebbe in Tanya, Varuach Toshev Alakim, I'm sorry, not in Tanya, Varuach Toshev Alakim Asher Nesana, that the spirit will return to the God that gave it. The idea behind this is, Kol Neshama, every Neshama, Kechol Shetigdal Malosa, as great as the advantage and the quality of the soul is, so that very nature of the soul, that it's so great, the descent of the soul makes a big impact. Since it descended from a high building to a deep pit and dungeon, it was enclosed in the body through the agency and the intermediary of the animal soul. So it affects the animal soul. It affects the godly soul. The very descent that it came down into this body affects that, doesn't stand in the same holiness like it was before it came into this world. Zachus, ubehirus, purity and brilliance, before it was descended down here below. Like the Alter Rebbe's wording is in Tanya, even a complete tzaddik who serves Hashem with awe and a powerful love of delight, lo yagiam lemailos devekusoi b'Hashem, will not reach the steps and stages of his cleaving to Hashem, b'terem yiridos elolam haza, as the neshama was before its descent to this world. How come? Why will he not reach that stage? Since the world and the body cannot handle that powerful and awesome revelation that the neshama, disembodied outside of the corporal realm, is able to take, the body would be overwhelmed by it. So therefore, everything is lessened and decreased of its spiritual experience by descending down here. That is the inner and spiritual explanation for why the Chazal teach us in Pirkei Avos that against your will do you live. What does it mean against your will? You're forced to live. Meaning that the neshama on its own is losing from this. we are holding on, in the page, we are holding on line 11 of the page that you see in front of you now. This is the inner and spiritual reason for what our Chazal said, Al Karchat Chai, that against your will you're alive. In other words, we are forced to live. What's it mean we are forced to live? Does not the neshama realize the great advantages it has down here? So he says it's still considered by force. Though the neshama knows many components in the advantage and quality of this world. So therefore, it would want to come down to this world. It would not feel like it's forced to do so. Still in all, because of the very fact, because it's a descent from a high building to a deep pit, there's a need for it to be coerced, to be able to fulfill the decree of Hashem, because it doesn't want to lose all those great and awesome types of spiritual experiences that it loses in descending down here. So now, the contrast of that, when the neshama finally leaves this world, it actually there's reason to rejoice. Yes, there's reason for mourning for those left behind, but for the neshama, it's actually a great advantage. Don't forget, this sikh is said on Vav Tishrei, the Rebbe's mother's yahrzeit. That's why when the neshama leaves the body, so it's called an ascent. This is referring to those whose lives were led and they followed Torah mitzvahs in their lives. So it's called an ascent. We say that the day of the yahrzeit every year, it's an ascent. That the neshama rises up higher to an even higher world. Not only every subsequent yahrzeit, but even initially when it first left the world, it's considered an ascent for the neshama. The neshama is going up higher. Because since this is the physical world, it's the lowest in level, that there's nothing beneath it, like the words of the Alter Rebbe. It's understood, when we leave this world, we're leaving the basement. We're finally being let out of the basement. We're going up. We come to a much higher world. All of this helps us understand the idea of tshuva for a tzaddik, for someone that doesn't have to atone and to repair any negative activities. So he says in line 18, Valpisa move on according to this understood Shagam Eitzel Tzaddik, even by a tzaddik, Shayach Inyan Hashuva Kfishi B'Shleimusa, it's applicable, the idea of return. Tshuva, the way it's in its most perfect state. Not returning from doing bad, but returning in ascending. The spirit shall return to Hashem that gave it. But we're not talking about leaving the body, but rather even while being down here and clothed in a body, because there's a need specifically for the neshama to be in the body. And long and good life, to be able to fulfill the mission of Hashem in the world, since the Torah does not exist in heaven. It was specifically placed down here in this world, so therefore it's necessary that the neshama should be in the body, but along with the neshama being in the body, it could return. It could rise up through the return of tshuva. And after that, followed by maisim toivim, the idea of mitzvahs and good deeds, then it will be clearer, purer, more brilliant, more holy, in such a manner that the body will not it disturb, va'afilo lo yalim v'yaster, the body will not even conceal and cover over on the neshama, lis achdus shal neshama malakus, for the union of the soul with godliness. Like it says, Toshuv Alakim, it'll return to God. Shezeu tachlis hashleimus b'toiv gufa sheyachol liyisetzel nivram. This is the ultimate perfection and good that could be by a created being. That it joins through the Torah with Hashem in a way that they're totally one. So that level of tshuva is the most perfect manner of tshuva. It's only about return. It's not about any negative past. It's not anything he did wrong. It's just he's in the basement. He's trying to join with Hashem. That's the tshuva. This high level of tshuva, where it's only focused on cleaving to Hashem, it's not about leaving any negativity behind. It's only applicable to those on the level of tzaddikim. Concerning those, concerning tzaddikim, Hashem said, Hashem saw about tzaddikim that they are few. As opposed to the measure of every person, that every person needs to strive to be something. We don't hope for him to be a tzaddik of the way Tanya describes a tzaddik, but rather he midas habeinani. That's the measure of the beinani kemavur b'Tanya, like Tanya explains it. That is what we should expect of ourselves. By the eitzla beinani aseder, who the order by the beinani is in the Beinani's mind can fall in thoughts, ideas, desires that are the opposite of Hashem's will. But he doesn't give in to them. Neged hayetzer hara, but through his avoida, in his war against the yetzer hara, who he immediately pushes them away. Is the very fact that a thought that is the opposite of Hashem's will can fall into the mind of the Beinani. This itself is an indicator. He's not in such a state and situation where the godly soul is what's ruling over him. Ella, rather, this is an indicator. There's also an animal soul. And this one will overpower that one when this nation is strong, meaning the Nefesh Elokis is strong, it'll overpower the Nefesh Bahamis. Kach, so that it could be, at least for a moment, lefoches, Goiveres HaNefesh Bahamis, Umapilo Eloi Machshava Havchis, and Nefesh Bahamis can overcome by the Beinani and throw into him an opposite thought than what's appropriate for a Jew. Therefore, therefore, concerning the majority of the world that's not on the level of tzaddikim, and we're talking here about a tzaddik amitikim of Tanya, the true definition of tzaddik, that's in Tanya, because if we talk about a tzaddik, not of Tanya, but the tzaddik, the way we call it in the colloquial, over there's many such tzaddikim. Here we're talking about the majority of the world that's not on the level of the tzaddik of Tanya. So those people, yesh tzoydach b'tshuva shibchusa b'darge v'kedemus l'tshuva anaylas deruch tash v'elikim. There's a need in a return that's lower in level and precedes the higher tshuva of the spiritual return to Hashem. Not only does he have to return, not only does he have to do tshuva on the yeshus, that's a result of the descent of the neshama down here below. This ego is a result of this descent of the neshama down here below and makes the person feel like a separate entity. But the tshuva needs to entail actually something negative. Elagam al pagam v'chisaron l'rega, also on the temporary blemish and lack. That there could be an existence that should fall into his mind, a thought and a will that's not appropriate, that's not matching up to the will of the Creator. Because in truth, if the Jew would be as it is the nature of the Jew. What is the nature of the Jew? The nature of the Jew is that we know the godly soul is a part of Hashem above mamish. So if that true nature would be evident, it wouldn't be applicable even a moment that a foreign thought should fall into his mind. How much more so a will or a desire, that's the opposite of the nature of the godly soul. Like we find even in halacha, even concerning a literal animal, not the spiritual animal within us, but a physical animal. If an animal jumps into fire, we are released of the liability of many things concerning guarding such an animal, because it's an unnatural type of thing. Since seeing an animal jump the fire, it's a proof that it's a not normal animal. So if that's so concerning a physical animal, a literal animal, so he says in line 13, how much more so concerning the godly soul, that from the nature of the godly soul, it will not jump into the fire. What's considered fire for the godly soul that it wouldn't jump in there? It's anything that's not the will of the Creator, meaning something something that is against the will of the Creator is something that separates it from cleaving to the God of life. The opposite of a state and situation of you are cleaving in Havaya, your God. You are all alive today. Therefore, it has to be by him the tshuva that he descended from his level. The godly soul is only one of two judges, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, and because it's only one of two judges that offer an opinion in the Beinani, therefore it's possible that also the other judge from the left side, meaning the animal soul, it could could throw in an untoward and unwanted thought. Since that judge from the left side has the same connection to the person, to the Beinani, like the judge from the right, the Yetzer Tov. Therefore, again, since I'm being associated with things that are the opposite of Hashem's will, so my tshuva is in a much lower type of level of tshuva. This tshuva is lower, incomparably so, to the tshuva of that we spoke about before, the tshuva of tzaddikim, that the spirit will return to Hashem. It's not levels of return. It's an incomparable level of being low. The difference between the time prior to the tshuva to after the tshuva is, am I acting according to how a Jewish nature is to act, or the opposite of the nature of a Jew? If I'm acting in accordance with the animal soul, the body, and the concealment and covering of the world. Moving, it's understood. The idea of tshuva, the way it's in this level, it's connected if he's busy dealing with returning from a state of negative, of not acting in a natural, normal way for a Jew. So it involves bitterness, it involves being upset. Until it's a terrible feeling of bitterness. When he thinks into the fact that the soul that you placed in me is pure. You, Hashem, created her, you formed her, you blew her, the neshama, into me. And you, Hashem, preserver within me. Va'afal became, despite that relationship that the Yid has with Hashem, nimtza b'mayim the matzav she'asa inim bilti rotzu, he finds himself in a state and situation that he did something untoward b'fnei melech malch amlach makadosh baruch hu, in the presence of the King of Kings Hashem. But b'shah sha'atam Hashem b'kirbi, at the time, that very moment that I did something inappropriate, Hashem himself is busy preserving my neshama inside of me. And then he comes to a great bitterness that there's nothing higher than that. So the Rebbe is going to say, so how do we reach Simcha? This is seemingly, at first glance, totally opposite of Simcha by the majority of Jews, that they're not doing the tshuva of the tzaddik, they're doing the tshuva of the Beinani. So he says in line 26, became still in all, along with the approach of bitterness that's in tshuva. So the tshuva inspires in the person also an approach of joy. Just the opposite, simcha a very great joy. Concerning the service of fulfillment of mitzvahs, b'chol mitzvah sheb'Torah, and every single mitzvah in the Torah, there's the obligation that this avodah has to be out of joy and gladness of heart. Like the Rambam wrote in his book called Yad HaChazaka, Sefer Shel Piskei Dinim Kol Echad V'Achs MiYisrael. It's a book of laws. It's not just pious proclamations and spiritual things. It's practical laws and directives to every single Jewish man and woman. And he writes B'Soif Hilchos Lulav, at the conclusion of the laws of Lulav and the laws of Sukkah and so on. Hasimcha sheyismach adam b'asiyas ha-mitzvah, the joy that a person should rejoice in the performance of a mitzvah. Avoida gedoylihi, it's a great avoida. Like we derive from the fact that David HaMelech would jump and dance with all of his might before Hashem when they were returning the Aron from captivity. And on the other hand, the opposite of that is, if a person is lacking joy at the time of fulfilling the mitzvahs, moving with the Rambam, it's understood from the words of the Rambam, he's lacking the recognition of the importance of a command of Hashem and the importance of fulfilling Hashem's command. Think into this. Take a moment to think about this. The person was given the opportunity to fulfill the command of Hashem, and being in his state and situation, even if this person was the most perfect and highest level of all creations, as great and as high of a creation he may be, there's still a great chasm, there's still no comparison, an awesome gap between the created being, a creation, and the creator. How much more so if he's still lacking being perfect of all the creations, how much more so, like we said before, Sif Aleph in the first ois, that the majority of the world are on a level of Beinanim, and not in the level of true tzaddikim of Tanya. Still in all, despite the fact that I know how imperfect I am as a creation of Hashem, I have an opportunity to fulfill the command of Hashem. It wasn't reserved for the most special and most perfect. Even me with my imperfections can do a command of Hashem. And through my activity, through my fulfilling Hashem's will, I am causing delight to Hashem. Like Hashem said, that's a pleasing thing before me, that I said my will was fulfilled. Since by Hashem it's impossible to separate and divide between something that's a pleasing spirit before Him to all other matters of Hashem, when we please Hashem, we affect to draw down all matters by Hashem. Until drawing down bracha and success to the one who fulfills the mitzvah and to all who are involved with that person fulfilling the mitzvah. So a person that does the mitzvah, not only he or she becomes part of Hashem's bracha circle, if you will, success circle, but everyone that's connected to me, my family, my friends, my whoever I have influence on, also become influenced by that bracha and hatzlacha that's coming down. Therefore, Bechein, line 10, if the person thinks into it, even for a short while, he has to be in a powerful joy. That when I'm doing a mitzvah, despite my imperfections, despite what I may or may not have done a moment earlier, this opportunity that I have to do a mitzvah, despite my imperfections, should bring great joy. And he continues in line 11, if he's lacking in joy, this is an indication that the person did not take the time to think into that. And that itself is an egregious offense. This itself shows that he doesn't take his mitzvahs seriously. How could it be that he has a command from the King of Kings Hashem, he doesn't find it appropriate to consider the value that he's able to do a mitzvah? Hashem gave him mitzvahs. Shouldn't I take the moment to think about what this means, what this great opportunity is all about? And how much more so if the person did take the opportunity to think about it, to contemplate about this. And this contemplation did not influence him, it did not affect him to be joyous. It didn't take him, it didn't permeate him that he should actually be joyous. Obviously, there's something that needs to be fixed up over here. So he goes on line 15. This is true by every mitzvah. If in the fulfillment of every single mitzvah, one has to be very joyous. How they move, and so it's understood that how much has to be the great joy in fulfilling the mitzvah of tshuva. Tshuva is, if all mitzvahs a person has to be joyous, tshuva is so much more so, because tshuva is a super mitzvah, like he's going to explain. Tshuva has the capability to fix up the lack and the blemish that a person might have missed out in other mitzvahs. And the Rebbe puts on a very interesting way of presenting this now. Line 18, B'chol shara mitzvahs, and all other mitzvahs, mitzvah achas eina yecholel l'saken mitzvah acheret. One mitzvah cannot repair and fix up another mitzvah. I had a question this week by somebody that asked if they could do mitzvah A so that other person should not do the mitzvah. But that person himself has to do mitzvah A. So anyway, it's not going to help because you have to do it for yourself. But even then, Though someone that's involved in the performance of a mitzvah is under certain circumstances at that time when he can't do both mitzvahs, he is released from the obligation of doing a different mitzvah. And it's known the explanation. How come while I'm performing one mitzvah, I am released from the obligation of doing another mitzvah is because in the mitzvah that he's involved in, it has somewhat of the mitzvah that he's being released from. In Kedusha, everything is interconnected. So every one of the 613 mitzvahs, including it, all the other mitzvahs in it. Therefore, while I'm doing mitzvah 1 of the 613 mitzvahs, that's not allowing me to do mitzvah 2 of the 613 mitzvahs. It doesn't mean that I'm not fulfilling the second mitzvah. It's being included in my observance of mitzvah number 1. That is all true when I am occupied in fulfilling one mitzvah. But what happens if I missed doing a mitzvah by choice? So it goes on, Afel became still an all shaykh loimer. It's impossible to say if he missed performing one mitzvah. That he fulfilled the lack and deficiency through fulfilling another mitzvah and saying, I will make up for this mitzvah that I missed by doing another mitzvah. It doesn't work that way. Every mitzvah stands on its own. By fulfilling this mitzvah, he has initially somewhat of the mitzvah that's lacking, but he cannot fulfill the lack of that mitzvah. So let's say if a person missed davening on Sunday, davening Monday is not going to fill that lack. Davening twice on Thursday is not going to fill that lack for Sunday. No, he has to daven on Sunday, he has to daven on Thursday, he has to daven on Sunday, he has to daven on Monday. Davening Monday will never fill the lack of Sunday. The only exception of one mitzvah that can fix up other mitzvahs is tshuva. Line 22. There is a single mitzvah, one and only mitzvah, shekol inyan v'ikir inyan hu l'malich Yisrael subegavim shel shara mitzvahs. That entire purpose and idea is to fill the lack and the blemish of all other mitzvahs. Shezoi mitzvah tshuva. That's the mitzvah of tshuva. Shekol inyan hu. Its entire purpose is shim hayus doinus rachman l'tzlan. If heaven forbid there were things that he did intentionally wrong, in Yadei Tshuva Meyiram, through Tshuva, out of awe and fear, Yasmem Shakogis, he will transform them into unintentional instead of intentional misdeeds. Shagam Inyan Zehu Tikun Shloi Be'erech, even moving from an intentional sin and turning it into an unintentional sin, that's also an incomparable fixing up of the past. How much more so if he arrives, or when he arrives at the state out of doing tshuva out of love, then intentional sins become for him like mitzvahs, like the Gemara relates. That through that he is actually changing it and transforming it from one entity to an entirely different entity. Instead of being intentional sins, they become not just unintentional sins, but they become mitzvahs, they become merits. Since the main idea and purpose and the characteristic of tshuva is to fill in anything that we were lacking and missing. V'yaseidim is even more than just filling in, lafich aveira l'mitzvah, to transform an aveira to a mitzvah. How they move, and so it's understood. Shebishah shemekayim mitzvah tshuva, at the time that he fulfills the mitzvah of tshuva. Hine lemroi shemesitra chada yesh le'merir satzum ala maisim abil to the tzuyim. Oy ali yoysim maimin amatzah shloiked boy. Despite the fact that on the one hand he has a terrible bitterness for the negative actions, or being in a state and situation that's not appropriate, Yes, like Bob B'Shas Beis Bob Be'es Kam Simcha Tzuma Yoiser Ma Simcha Shekol Mitzvah Skulim V'Shkula Kenegdon. He has at that very moment a powerful and great joy, even greater than the joy he would feel in all the other mitzvahs, and equal. The joy in tshuva is equal to all the mitzvahs combined. Since the mitzvah of tshuva is something that could fulfill any lacking and any blemishes that was in any mitzvah, so therefore the joy of the mitzvah of tshuva is equal to all of the joy of all the mitzvahs combined. That's one idea in the joyous nature of tshuva, despite what we said that there's a certain amount of being upset and running away from the negative. So he says in Ois Gimel line 32, there's another aspect to tshuva, and therefore also another aspect in joy, in addition to the fact that the tshuva fulfills all the deficiencies of all the mitzvahs. Therefore, the joy of tshuva corresponds and is equal to the joy that could be in all the mitzvahs combined. There's a component of tshuva that's incomparably higher in comparison to all the other mitzvahs. It's understood from the teaching of our Chazal that say, a place of that Baal Tshuva stand, so complete tzaddikim are not able to stand over there. What? How come? Because through tshuva we reach a higher plateau, a higher plane than what we will reach through the action of mitzvahs, which is tzaddikim. So it's not just that tshuva fills the lack of all the mitzvahs, and therefore it's equal to all the mitzvahs. It's totally of a different category than all the mitzvahs, and that's why in a place that Baal Tshuva stands, even the complete tzaddikim, that they're filled with mitzvahs. They have all the mitzvahs. If tshuva was equal to the mitzvahs, like we were saying before, the joy of tshuva equals the joy of all the mitzvahs combined, so then Baal Tshuva and tzaddikim would be on the same level. But that's not what the Chazal say. The Chazal say at the place the Baal Tshuva stand, tzaddikim cannot even reach over there. Tzaddikim cannot even stand over there. Which means that tzaddikim, what are tzaddikim? Tzaddikim are those who have filled mitzvahs. Since they do not have the level of the Baal Tshuva, that means that tshuva is not just equal to all the mitzvahs because it repairs the mitzvahs. It's way out there. It's way much higher than the mitzvahs. And therefore he's going to explain, and therefore the Simcha has to be in so much greater fashion. Top of the fourth page. This that's being affected through the neshama descending below is much higher than the level of the neshama prior to descending below. This level that a person reaches through tshuva, it's impossible for the neshama before it came down here to experience that great ascent. When the neshama is above, hewn out from under the throne of glory, the whole idea of something negative and untoward does not apply. It's an impossibility. While the neshama is above, it's in a state and situation like Eliyahu Hanavi said, I swear by Hashem, the God of Yisrael, that I stood before him. Now, it wasn't just Eliyahu Hanavi's neshama, but v'cheinu benegel and nishmas kol ish Yisrael. So too, it's concerning the neshama of every Jewish person. Before its descent down there below, it stood in its image and its full stature before the Holy King. In general, this is a state and situation of complete tzaddikim. The idea of an aveda doesn't apply. Even not a subtle aspect of an aveda. Meaning, in our world, what is something that is similar to the state of the neshama above, a tzaddik down here, that the whole idea of Aveda is out of the question. So he says in line 8, the ascent that occurs through the descent of neshama down here below is that the neshama reaches a level of Baal Tshuva. That's so much higher than it was in comparison to its previous level, meaning the way it was in Gan Eden. Like we said before, that a place of Baal Tshuva stand, even complete tzaddikim cannot stand over there. Therefore, though we said initially that the general descent down here below is in the way that the neshama feels like it's forced to come down here, it's also permeated with a powerful joy. What is the joy? First of all, first of all, it's happy that it received the great privilege and the merit to go out on the mission, on a shlichus for Hashem. That shlichus to make this world into a home for Him. That's the main joy. The main joy is, wow, give a look, Hashem entrusted me with this great mission. Along with this joy that he's happy about this great mission that Hashem gave him, he's also joyous about the following. Since Hashem does not withhold the reward of any creature, so the neshama also gains an ascent that's incomparable to what it had before it was drafted, before it was asked to go on this mission. That the neshama now reaches the state of a Baal Tshuva. Line 15, calls it moving from all this understood. Though the general idea of the 10 days of Tshuva are like they're called, they're days in the idea of Tshuva. That Tshuva ordinarily inspires a person to feel upset and bitter. It doesn't contradict at all. Along with this merirus, this bitterness, we are permeated with a very powerful joy. Because Hashem gave the Jewish people the power to transform intentional sins to unintentional sins, and following that into merits. The liskes ladargis bal tshuva shalamayla filamadreges tzadikim gmurim, to merit to reach the level of bal tshuva that's higher even than complete tzaddikim. Up till now, the Rebbe was talking about the general idea of tshuva and the 10 days of tshuva concerning the great joy that it should elicit by a person. Now, as I mentioned initially, the Rebbe is going to connect it specifically with the time, with the particular calendar situation this year, that this year is a year that begins with 2 days Rosh Hashanah followed by a day of Shabbos. Line 19, Ois Dalet. In addition to what we said earlier concerning the approach of tshuva, that's in a way of a powerful upset alongside with a powerful joy at once. This takes place every year, every Aseres Yemei Tshuva. There is a specific quality in this year. Duber Besvadas Akademis, it was spoken about in the previous Farbrengen. The way the calendar of this year is that there's 3 consecutive days of as we'll soon see, a special type of holiness and goodness. The 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and the Shabbos following them, b'li hefsek, without any type of interruption. Even though they are included in, and they are the beginning of the 10 days of Tshuva, Poisek HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Teiraseh she'asar lahaskir b'hem inyan shel chet va'oven b'pesha, that these 3 days, 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and the Shabbos following, it's prohibited, Hashem ruled in His Torah, to mention anything about sins and transgressions and so on. We're part of 10 days of Tshuva. Aren't we forgetting something? But no, Hashem said, you're not forgetting anything. We do not mention the first 3 days. We do not mention anything about sin or transgression. Line 24. V'hainu, this means it's in the power of the ruling of the Torah to affect the idea of tshuva. Even in the low level. Someone that's holding on a level of a beini, or even lower than a beini, meaning, as we know what lower than a beini means, that the idea of tshuva is to rise up from being what he is now, either a lower than a beini or a beini, to go and reach a level of Baal tshuva. This can take place in these days without any mention of sin or transgression. He's not involved in repairing it by being invested and involved with the negative in direct fashion. Rather, the way he repairs it is in a transcendent, aloof way. In a direct way, you're not supposed to mention on the first 3 days of the year any type of sin or transgression. Even not an idea of chet. There's 3 levels that Chazal say of chet, oven, and pesha. Chet is the least. None of them is allowed to be mentioned. Line 29. The truth is, this power is to be found every year, because the beginning of the 10 days of Tshuva every year begins with the first 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, which sin and transgression may not be mentioned. 2 days is not considered an established thing, a chazaka, concerning all matters. There are certain things where 2 is considered a chazaka, but not in all matters. This is the advantage of this year's calendar setup. That in this year's calendar setup, there was for 3 years given this capability, 3 days given this capability. But we know when there's 3 times, this makes something established and set, according to all opinions and in all matters. So the Rebbe says in line 32, V'nimtza comes out, this year, it gives a remembrance, an inspiration, and an additional energy to speed up and to increase and to go even more in depth in the effect of tshuva mit simcha, out of an approach of joy along with bitterness, in such a manner that the main service should be just in increasing in good. That's the main focus that we get in the energy of this year. The Rebbe says in the final page that we're learning now, since even a little bit light pushes away much darkness, how much more so that a lot of light pushes away a little bit darkness. So there's the empowerment, the avodah to increase in light. That's the avodah of the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and Shabbos Shuvah. Will push away and chase away the darkness. That anyway was by the person qualitatively very little. Because by the Jewish people, even those that are called Poishe Yisrael are filled with mitzvahs like a pomegranate. Since the Chazal say that a full vessel cannot contain, you can't put things into a full vessel. So if you say that a Poishi Yisrael is filled with mitzvahs like a pomegranate, there's nowhere left to squeeze in and to push in something that's untoward and negative. Since he's filled with good things, mitzvahs like a pomegranate. So that means that anything negative, anything untoward, is only outside of the Jew. It's got stuck to him outside. Not just in quality are they few, but also quantity-wise are they few. Why are they few? A thought of tshuva transforms him to be a tzaddik gomer, kipsak din gemara bekiddushin, like the Gemara rules in Sextus Kiddushin, that if a person betroths a woman on the condition that I'm a tzaddik gomer, even if he did a moment ago something awful, she's still betrothed, because maybe in a moment's time he had a thought of tshuva, and therefore he became a tzaddik gomer. Ois Hey, line 8. Valpia Omer, according to what was said, that also in the 10 days of tshuva, that the avodah is in tshuva out of bitterness and upset. Along with this, there's also a great joy. This also connects the Aseres Tshuva with the time of our rejoicing, meaning the time of Sukkot. Seemingly, the Aseres Tshuva and the time of our rejoicing, Sukkot and Simchas Torah, are opposites. The days of Aseres Tshuva are bitter days, and Simcha, this is days of joy. Still, and all it's known, the idea that what's concealed comes out revealed to the day of our celebration. The matters that were concealed on Rosh Hashanah, they come out in a revealed way in the day of our celebration, the time of our rejoicing in Sukkot. So Sukkot is not the opposite of Rosh Hashanah and the 10 days of Tshuva. It's one continuum and a revelation of what was there before. Like it's in the physicality of the world. Rosh Hashanah, the moon is still concealed. Because just now in Rish Chodesh was the birth of a new moon, after it was initially completely concealed. There was only a point. And little by little the Levana is going and growing until the 15th in the month, the day of our celebration. The moon is full and complete. So too it's concerning the Jewish people. They count to the Levana. Since the Jewish people are similar to the Levana, and they will in the future be renewed like the Levana, like the moon. Moving for this understood. That all the matters that are revealed to the day of our celebration on the 15th of the month, the day of Sukkot, were already affected and completed and done in a concealed way on Rosh Hashanah. It's not such a way that we are skipping the intermediate days between Rosh Hashanah and the 15th of the month. Rather, day by day, the concealment becomes decreased and the revelation becomes increased. Just like concerning the moon. It doesn't jump from being invisible at the first of the month and all of a sudden being a full moon on the 15th. Then Rosh Hashanah, the moon is concealed. And day by day it increases and grows till on the end of Yom Kippurim, at the conclusion of the 10 days of Tshuva, then the custom of Yidden is to do Kiddush Levana, that we bless the new moon, because it's already something that's big enough to really appreciate its growth. From this is also understood concerning the time of our rejoicing. Though it's a beginning in a revealed way from the Torah, is it the 15th of the 7th month, meaning on the first day of Sukkot? But still in all, Maschila Kvar Berosh Hashanah Loidak HaAchonel Zeh, and Rosh Hashanah begins not just the preparation for the joy of Sukkot, Elagam Ha'inyan Atzmoi, but rather the joy of Sukkot begins already on Rosh Hashanah. It's still not a mitzvah and a Torah to be joyous in the days leading up to Sukkot. But it constantly increases on a day-by-day basis. Just like every day, the light of the Levana increases. And also correspondingly, the light of the Yidden increased daily because Yidden are likened to the moon. Since every day is increased in the study of Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs in general, especially it's increased in the fulfillment of mitzvah tshuva, because that's the mitzvah of the 10 days of tshuva, to increase in tshuva, till the ultimate perfection of Yom Kippur, that we have the ultimate tshuva, and that leads into the ultimate joy of Sukkot.